I never thought I'd be the person writing one of these stories, but here I am, still shaking as I look at the legal papers sitting on my kitchen table and realizing that I haven't spoken to my own flesh and blood in over 6 months. My brother and I were always close, the kind of bond people envied, until he decided that my happiness was a personal insult to his existence and tried to dismantle my entire life from the inside out. He didn't just try to steal the woman I love, he tried to erase me from my own life. And in the end, I had to make a choice that would either save my future or burn my entire family to the ground. I chose the fire. And honestly, looking back at the wreckage, I still don't know if I'm the hero of this story or the villain. So I'm asking you right now, before I dive into the mess that destroyed my family, was I wrong for taking it as far as I did? Or would you have burned it all down too? It all started about 3 years ago when I met Sarah, and for the first time in my life, everything just felt right. I'm a guy who usually plays it safe, working a steady job in project management and keeping my circle small. But Sarah changed the frequency of my life. She was brilliant, funny, and had this way of making everyone in the room feel like they were the only person that mattered. My brother, Leo, met her a few weeks after we started dating. Leo has always been the golden boy in our parents' eyes, charming, impulsive, and always the loudest person in the room. He's 2 years younger than me, but he's always lived like the world owed him a favor. When I introduced him to Sarah, I saw that familiar glint in his eyes, the one he gets when he sees a new car or a watch he wants. But I brushed it off. I trusted him. We're brothers, right? We grew up in a household where my parents basically worshipped the ground Leo walked on because he was the sensitive one, the one who needed more encouragement. I was the dependable older brother who never caused trouble, which apparently meant I didn't need any praise. I worked hard for everything I had, including my position in the construction and real estate business. Leo, on the other hand, was given a title and a salary just for showing up. He had this habit of taking things that weren't his. It started small when we were kids, like a toy or a shirt, and my parents would always say, "Oh, Leo just looks up to you so much, just let him have it." That phrase became the soundtrack to my life. Every time I achieved something, Leo was right there to claim a piece of it. When I got my first promotion, he suddenly decided he wanted to work in the same department. When I bought my first car, he begged my dad for the exact same model in a different color. It was like I was the blueprint for the life he wanted to live, but he didn't want to do the work to build it himself. For the first year of my relationship with Sarah, things were great. Sarah and I moved in together, and Leo was a constant fixture in our lives, coming over for dinner or joining us for weekend trips. But slowly, I started noticing things that felt off. Leo would show up unannounced when he knew I was working late, claiming he just wanted to check in on Sarah. He'd bring her favorite coffee or mention inside jokes they apparently shared from brief moments I wasn't in the room. He started dressing like me, buying the same cologne I used, and even mimicking my mannerisms. It was subtle at first, like he was trying to skinwalk his way into my identity. He would sit on my sofa, in my house, drinking my expensive scotch, and look at Sarah with a look of pure possession. It made my skin crawl. But whenever I brought it up to my parents, they'd laugh and say I was being the grumpy big brother again. At first, Sarah would tell me about these visits with a confused look on her face, but eventually she stopped mentioning them altogether. I didn't want to be the jealous boyfriend, so I stayed quiet, but the tension was building like a pressure cooker. The turning point was our parents' 30th anniversary party. We were all at a nice restaurant, and Leo got a bit too much to drink. He stood up to give a toast, but instead of talking about our parents, he started talking about the perfect woman and how some people just get lucky without even trying. He was looking directly at Sarah the whole time, his eyes bloodshot and intense. He said, "Some guys have everything handed to them, the job, the house, the girl, and they don't even realize how close they are to losing it all because they're too boring to keep it." The table went silent, and I felt my blood turn to ice. That night, after we got home, I told Sarah I didn't want him around as much. She got defensive, saying I was being paranoid and that Leo was just going through a rough patch after his last breakup. That was the first time we ever really fought, and looking back, I realized that was exactly what Leo wanted. He was planting seeds of doubt between us. Over the next few months, it felt like I was living in a psychological thriller. Items of mine would go missing, my keys, my gym bag, even my laptop, only for them to turn up in weird places or for Leo to find them for me. He was gaslighting me into looking incompetent and unstable. He would call Sarah and tell her I was acting out or that I seemed depressed and aggressive. He even went as far as to create fake social media accounts to send me messages of Sarah out at bars she never went to, making me question her every move. He was playing both sides, acting as my concerned brother while whispering in her ear that I was losing my mind. Then came the messages. I started receiving anonymous texts with photos of Sarah and Leo at various cafes or parks during times I was at work. The captions were always something like, "He treats her better than you do," or "She looks happier with him." It was a disgusting, manipulative game he was playing, and I was finally ready to play hard. I hired a private investigator. I was spiraling. I confronted Leo, and he just laughed it off, calling me unhinged and telling our parents that I was becoming obsessive and controlling over Sarah. My own mother started calling me, asking if I was okay and suggesting I see a therapist. It was a masterclass in manipulation. I felt like the walls were closing in. Every time I tried to talk to Sarah, she seemed more distant, more guarded. She told me she felt like she was walking on eggshells around me. I didn't realize that Leo was spending his afternoons with her, telling her that I was talking about breaking up with her or that I was seeing someone else. He had even photoshopped images of me with other women to show her proof of my infidelity. He was crafting a narrative where he was her protector and I was the villain. He was systematically isolating me from everyone I loved. And the worst part was that it was working. I started staying at the office later and later just to avoid the tension at home, which only gave him more time to spend with her. The breaking point happened on the day I was planning to propose. I had the ring hidden in a specific drawer in my office, a spot only Leo knew about because he'd helped me pick it out months prior when I still trusted him. It was a custom-designed piece, something I'd saved for 2 years. When I went to get it, the box was empty. I felt a cold wave of nausea wash over me. I checked my phone and saw a notification from Sarah's Instagram. It was a photo of her hand, but she wasn't wearing my ring. She was holding a different, much cheaper ring, and the caption read, "Sometimes the person you're meant to be with is the one who's been there all along." My heart stopped. I called her, but she didn't pick up. I called Leo, and he answered with a smug, "Hey bruh, you heard the news? Sometimes the better man just wins." He told me that Sarah had realized I was too much to handle and that he had been her shoulder to cry on for months. He claimed they were moving into an apartment together that very weekend. I sat in my empty house, surrounded by the ghosts of a life I thought I was building, and realized that my brother hadn't just stolen my girlfriend. He had spent a year systematically destroying my reputation and my sanity just to prove he could. He wanted to win, and in his mind, winning meant taking everything I had. But he forgot one thing. I was the one who ran the numbers for the business. I was the one who saw the discrepancies. I realized then that I couldn't just walk away. I needed him to feel the weight of his own betrayal. I had been documenting everything, the weird texts, the security footage of him entering my house when I wasn't there, and even bank statements showing he'd been siphoning money from our joint family business account to pay for his impulsive lifestyle. I had the ammunition to ruin him, but it would mean exposing the family business to a massive audit and likely ending my relationship with my parents forever. I found out that he had been forging my signature on checks for months, thinking I was too distracted by my crumbling relationship to notice the missing funds. He had even opened a secret credit line in my father's name. He had spent over $400,000 on luxury rentals, trips, and gifts for Sarah, all using my name or my father's credit. He had been living the high life on stolen time and stolen money, and he was using that stolen money to buy the woman he took from me. So that's where I stood, at the edge of a cliff, holding the match that could start the fire. Before I tell you about the scorched earth plan I executed and how I handled the confrontation that changed everything, I want you to stop for a second. Put yourself in my shoes. You've lost your partner, your brother has betrayed you in the worst way possible, and your parents think you're the crazy one? Would you walk away and try to heal, or would you make sure the person who destroyed your life never has a moment of peace again? Comment down below right now and tell me, revenge or peace? What would you choose? I decided on revenge, but I wanted it to be absolute. I didn't just go after him for the girl, I went after his foundation. I spent the next 48 hours compiling every piece of evidence I had. I found out that Leo hadn't just been stealing from the business, he'd been using Sarah's name on some of the fraudulent documents, effectively making her an unwitting accomplice to his embezzlement. He was so arrogant that he thought I'd never look. I didn't call Sarah, I didn't call Leo, I called a lawyer and a private investigator. I also contacted the bank and flagged every single forged signature. I went through years of digital footprints, recovering deleted emails where he'd bragged to his friends about taking his brother's life. On the day they were moving into their new place, I didn't show up with a fist, I showed up with a process server and a police escort for a wellness check on my property that had been stolen. I arranged for the evidence of his theft to be delivered to our parents and the police simultaneously. I drove over to their new apartment, a place paid for with a deposit from a business account he had no right to touch. When Leo opened the door, he had this disgusting, triumphant smirk on his face, wearing one of my favorite shirts that he'd stolen months ago. He started to say something about how I should be a man and move on, but I just handed him a folder. I told him, "I'm not here for Sarah. You can keep the girl who chooses a snake. I'm here for the $500,000 you stole from the company and the fact that you used her social security number to do it." The look of pure, unadulterated terror that crossed his face was better than any punch I could have landed. Sarah came to the door, looking pale and confused, and I looked her dead in the eye and said, "He didn't choose you because he loves you, Sarah. He chose you because he wanted to see if he could take you from me, and now he's going to prison, and he's taking your credit score with him." I handed her a copy of the loan documents Leo had signed, in her name without her knowing. Her face drained of color as she realized the golden boy had set her up to be his fall girl. She realized that the ring on her finger wasn't a symbol of love, but a piece of evidence. I walked away without looking back, even as she started screaming at him and he started begging me to talk to him. The confrontation in the hallway was intense. Leo tried to charge at me, but the officers I'd brought along for the wellness check stepped in immediately. It was the most satisfying moment of my life, seeing him in handcuffs in front of the woman he thought he'd won. The aftermath was a nuclear winter for my family. My parents were devastated, not just by the theft, but by the fact that I was the one who turned him in. They called me a traitor. They said I should protect the family name above all else. My father even had the nerve to ask me to lie to the investigators to save Leo's skin, saying that one son in jail is enough to kill your mother. I told them that the family ended the moment Leo decided to gaslight me for a year and steal my life. I told them that if they chose to stand by a thief and a manipulator, then they were making their choice to lose their other son. I walked out of that house and haven't looked back. Leo ended up taking a plea deal because the evidence was insurmountable. Between the security footage of him in my office and the paper trail of forged signatures, he had no prayer. He's serving time now, and the family business had to be liquidated to cover the losses and the legal fees. My parents are living in a small rental now, and they still send me hateful emails blaming me for their downfall. Sarah is currently embroiled in a massive legal battle to clear her name from the fraudulent loans he took out in her name, and she's essentially bankrupt. She's lost her job, her car, and her reputation. She tried to call me, crying, apologizing, saying she was manipulated, and that she realized now what a mistake she made. She even told me she still loved me and that we could start over now that Leo's gone.
I blocked her number without saying a word. There is no starting over when the foundation is built on ashes. I spent months testing different options. I narrowed my search to 2 cities on the other side of the country. One had a vibrant tech scene and plenty of networking opportunities. The other was more mellow, less expensive, and closer to nature, but I didn't know which one to choose. I wanted to find a place where I could truly start fresh, where no one knew my name or my family's toxic history. What would you do in my situation? Which city would you choose? The tech hub with more career options or the quieter retreat closer to nature? Comment below and let me know your advice. I'm living the same status quo for years, and I couldn't be more excited about this new chapter. I found out that Leo hadn't just been stealing from the business, he'd been using Sarah's name on some of the fraudulent documents, effectively making her an unwitting accomplice to his embezzlement. He was so arrogant that he thought I'd never look. I didn't call Sarah. I didn't call Leo. I called a lawyer and a private investigator. I also contacted the bank and flagged every single forged signature. I went through years of digital footprints, recovering deleted emails where he'd bragged to his friends about taking his brother's life. On the day they were moving into their new place, I didn't show up with a fist. I showed up with a process server and a police escort for a wellness check on my property that had been stolen. I arranged for the evidence of his theft to be delivered to our parents and the police simultaneously. I drove over to their new apartment, a place paid for with a deposit from a business account he had no right to touch. When Leo opened the door, he had this disgusting, triumphant smirk on his face, wearing one of my favorite shirts that he'd stolen months ago. He started to say something about how I should be a man and move on, but I just handed him a folder. I told him, "I'm not here for Sarah. You can keep the girl who chooses a snake. I'm here for the $500,000 you stole from the company and the fact that you used her social security number to do it." The look of pure, unadulterated terror that crossed his face was better than any punch I could have landed. Sarah came to the door, looking pale and confused, and I looked her dead in the eye and said, "He didn't choose you because he loves you, Sarah. He chose you because he wanted to see if he could take you from me, and now he's going to prison, and he's taking your